Nice, Gordon. You didn't think you'd get away with this, did you, Ming?
Hi, Ray here. It's great to see you. In the last episode, I told how from my earliest childhood I'd been fascinated, like so many children of my generation, by the exploration of space. A lot of the excitement, truth and fiction, delivered by the cathode ray tubes invented by the German physicist Ferdinand Braun in 1897 of a new technology, television. But forget TV. I remember sitting by a big old cabinet radio at my aunt's house, listening to reporting on Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviet Union on October 4th, 1957. I would have been 5 and a half. In 1961, when I was 9, live coverage of the progress of Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, the first human to journey into outer space, had everyone glued to whatever mass communication device they had in their house. There's even reserved a place in my hippocampus alongside the Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassinations, the first moonwalk, and Woodstock. A year later, the Telstar 1 satellite was launched on July 10th, 1962. It relayed telephone calls, telegraph images, and provided the first transatlantic television transmissions. I still remember the tune from the English pop group The Tornadoes that celebrated the multinational communications project. Some of you may be familiar with the film Telstar, the Joe Meek story starring Kevin Spacey. I wasn't until I started putting the script together. But Meek was the guy behind the Spacey sound of the record and the technology of the clavulin, precursor of the Moog synthesizer. And I have this mental snippet. Telstar, Telstar, a message from afar, which follows the melody. But the Tornadoes hit was an instrumental, so I don't know where those lyrics came from. Maybe I made them up. The satellite and its successor Telstar 2 is still up there, orbiting the Earth, silent now, its solar array and backup batteries dead. Also, in the last episode, I compared the development of camera technology to bicycle technology, because after all, the camera and the bicycle are both, as I put it, cybernetic devices, robots, masterpieces of human ingenuity that arose almost in unison in the 19th century. I said that curiosity, as much, if not more than necessity, the Darwinian imperative, drives invention. In this video, episode 2 of Does Gear Matter, I'll follow the orbit of my own thoughts on these matters further into the unknown. I hope you'll follow me on this exploration of inner space, the place my mind wanders while staring skyward at all hours of the day. I've recently been looking at those incredible photographs from Mars, made by the space exploration vehicle, aptly named Curiosity. I have a friend, an old climbing partner. Together we explored some of the wildest reaches of this planet. I made some of my most audacious climbs in his company, on the sheer granite walls of Squamish, in the Coast Range, the Rockies, and the Purcell Mountains. After every climbing adventure, we met over a hot slide projector, a couple of beers, to compare Kodachromes and put together duplicate orders. Frank stars in the image that literally launched my pro career. But Frank wasn't satisfied with terrestrial explorations. Oh no. Frank has, in fact, journeyed to the edge of space where the black mysteries of beyond meets the penumbra of Earth's atmosphere. On a Russian MiG-29UB Fulcrum fighter. He's mad about all things spacey. He calls himself the intergalactic drifter. He's hung out with many of the great NASA astronauts. He has a prized collection of space memorabilia. No moon rocks, but like me, he does have pieces of mountains brought back from alpine summits and ridges. And here's my chunk of Mount Athabasca. And Frank has a print of the iconic Earthrise photo, taken from lunar orbit by astronaut William Anders on December 24, 1968, during the Apollo 8 mission. It's autographed by two of the men who were there, Commander Frank Borman and Command Module Pilot James Lovell. Frank calls it the most important photograph of the 20th century. And my first impulse was to question that assertion. I mean, there have been photographs that have helped to stop wars and mass mercury poisonings. But it caused me to ask myself if I could think of a more influential, not to mention beautiful, image from the period. Well, the late climbing photographer Galen Rowell declared it the most influential environmental photograph ever taken. And the more I think about it, the more I am inclined to agree. I mean, it truly is stunning, incredibly beautiful, and emotionally powerful if you take a moment to absorb its import. Those of us old enough to remember the world before the photo graced the cover of every newspaper and magazine and TV screen know just how much it changed human consciousness itself. And after bikes and cameras, human consciousness is the study that has most occupied my thoughts. Well, it might be that cameras and bikes are what I turn to when I need a break from thinking too much about psychology. Anyway, these photos from beyond are truly epic. Earthrise, I believe, didn't just coincide with Earth Day, which debuted 2 years after this photo was made. It inspired it to a large degree. But the point here is that those photos taken an extraordinary amount of gear to create. Earthrise itself was the product of a specialized Hasselblad. NASA adopted or inducted Hasselblad cameras in 1962 during the Mercury program at the suggestion of prospective NASA astronaut and photography enthusiast Walter Schirra, who'd go on to create many fantastic photos through the orbiter's window. There's still a couple of Hasselblads abandoned on the moon's surface to reduce weight on liftoff. And maybe the amazing photos we're seeing from the surface of Mars prove what many painters have claimed over the years, that a chimpanzee or robot can take a photo. I mean, look at this selfie. It even follows the rule of thirds. Did Curiosity graduate from the Rhode Island School of Design? What's packed into that machine learning brain? Maybe gear is the only thing that matters, other than human imagination that animates the mother technology. Perhaps we're venturing into another territory regarding the legitimacy of photography itself, and that's the subject of another script I'm working on. Remember Susan Sontag's assertion I referred to in the last episode? She noted in her book on photography that photography has powers that no other image system has ever enjoyed, because unlike the earlier ones, it is not dependent on an image maker. But can robots be trusted to arbitrate taste? Well, going on the algorithms that vet social media content, the answer to that question is already in. Why do some people steadfastly stick to the claim that camera gear doesn't matter? Is there some remnant of defensiveness by those desirous of the imprimatur artist that arose in response to the charge from painters in the 1800s that photographers were charlatans, fraudulent artists? After all, the defense arose in those days in the form of, for instance, the photo secession, led by Alfred Stieglitz. Early on, pictorialism, as it was called, aped art in order to prove its validity. Later, groups like F64, organized by Bay Area photographers like Ansel Adams, Imogen Cunningham, John Paul Edwards, Henry Swift, Willard Van Dyck, and Edward Weston, threw off such affectations, celebrating the purity of the unadorned lens. And that's maybe the subject of another chat, but it looks like they won. And of course, the camera, in turn, had a revolutionary effect on painting. It drove painters inward, looking for a new symbolic language for their ideas. At the same time as modern psychology sought to plumb the unconscious and subconscious, perhaps meeting the surrealists along the way. Charles Baudelaire, father of modern art criticism, reacting to photography from the Salon Review of 1859, had this to say: "I do not believe, or at least I do not wish to believe, in the absolute success of such a brutish conspiracy, in which, as in all others, one finds both fools and knaves. But I am convinced that the ill-applied developments of photography, like all other purely material developments of progress, have contributed much to the impoverishment of the French artistic genius, which is already so scarce." The evil camera was responsible, the angry critic opined, for the ruination of whatever might remain of the divine in the French mind. Furthermore, he wrote, "If photography is allowed to supplement art in some of its functions, it will soon have supplanted or corrupted it altogether, thanks to the stupidity of the multitude, which is its natural ally." Baudelaire was not amused. To painters and critics like Baudelaire, it was all about the brain behind the brush, and photographers fell short in that organ. Then again, the critics didn't like the daubs Van Gogh put on canvas either. Tough lot. If you agree with Baudelaire, and I do to a degree, but from the other side of the equation, photography is about the gear. However, I'm not so cynical to believe that a camera can't reflect the intelligence of its owner. In other words, I obviously don't believe that owning a camera, a priori, is proof of reduced mental capacity. I think that directed by the right hands, the hands being servants of intelligence, art may be the result. And I don't know how to impart that idea other than to repeat observations related to the works of two other French photographers, Eugene Atget and Henri Cartier-Bresson. Cartier-Bresson gave us the idea of the decisive moment. And when it comes to Atget's photographs, formal urban landscapes, Walker Evans, who was arguably Atget's American protege, said simply, he knew where to stand. These intuitive skills, I'm not sure, can be taught. And let me say that if the claim is an exasperated response to the endless brand wars and obsessive arguments about which manufacturer's eye-tracking autofocus is the best this week, then I'm with Baudelaire all the way. Cretins. And before we move on, we might ask how the gear these two masters used, Atget's 18 by 24 centimeter glass plate view camera versus Cartier-Bresson's Leica, affected the imagery they produced. We've examined a lot of French culture in this series, haven't we? Well, it's hard to argue with a country that prizes cycling and art. I believe that with our various robotic devices, with the push bike as a high point of ingenuity because it still demands direct participation from our physiology, represent an attempt to live beyond ourselves, from the simple freezing of a moment to dreams of cryogenic journeys beyond the stars. Of my enduring obsessions, cycling was taken away, at least as a competitive pursuit, by a severe injury. My writing and photography remain as long as I can do them, but I miss the physical, visceral part of the equation. Who knows? Maybe electric assist technology might be on the horizon. I want to finish this long ramble with this. Cycling, photography, pretty much every endeavor, trade, and area of life have been revolutionized by technology, but our inspiration still depends on the joy we find in any pursuit. Without that joie de vivre, nothing is worth doing. So let's not worry about whether we have the perfect camera. Let's just take what we have. Let's let that existing technology take us for a ride out into the wonders that still exist. On the seashore, riverside, in the mountains, your village or city. Search through your lenses for signs of life. Because it's sad if we, as thinking, curious humans, are not there to appreciate in our cerebral cortex the fantastic ability to capture our lives and the universe beyond ourselves If it comes down to budget, and I want to stress that you don't have to spend a fortune on camera gear to make good photos or video, though it's harder to do the latter on a budget. But it can be done. People are making excellent content with a smartphone. In fact, if you have enough free shit to give away, you can build a huge YouTube following with really bad production values. I recall an essay I wrote in grade 11 lit class protesting the premises of science fiction writers Ray Bradbury's and Isaac Asimov's futuristic tales. I'd read Asimov's I, Robot and Bradbury's Martian Chronicles, both published in 1950. I think it was Bradbury's story, There Will Come Soft Rains, that outraged my youthful idealism. The story unfolded in what we would today call a smart house, whose inhabitants had been obliterated by nuclear war. The house continued to go about its robotic tasks.
Today is August 5th, 2057.
Had he read my adolescent essay, Bradbury might have answered as he did in a letter he wrote in 1974 in response to fears of robotic rampage. And I'll give the last word to him. Any machine, any robot, is the sum total of the ways we use it. Why not knock down all robot camera devices and the means for reproducing the stuff that goes into such devices, things called projectors in theaters? A motion picture projector is a non-humanoid robot which repeats truths which we inject into it. Is it inhuman? Yes. Does it project human truths to humanize us more often than not? Yes. We should burn down all the theaters in the world because some films are trash? Drivel. So it is, finally, with the robots you say you fear. Why fear something? Why not create with it? Why not build robot teachers to help out in schools where teaching certain subjects is a bore for everyone? Why not have Plato sitting in your Greek class answering jolly questions about the Republic? I would love to experiment with that. I am not afraid of robots. I am afraid of people. 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 I want them to remain human. I can help keep them human with the wise and lovely use of books, films, robots, and my own mind, hands, and heart. Bradbury says he's more afraid of various human sects killing one another. But, he said, robots? God, I love them. I will use them humanely to teach all of the above. My voice will speak out of them, and it will be a damned nice voice. And so his voice, reproduced and recorded by me, is coming out of this robotic device. Take care of yourselves. Cheers, and we'll see you later.